Magick Archer is an absolute blast to play in Dragon's Dogma. You're able to deal good physical damage with your daggers and insanely high amounts of magic with your bow. Imagine if you took a sorcerer and a strider and they had a baby. That is Magick Archer. You have probably the most variety in how to approach combat, whether that be lighting up the room, buffing yourself, or pew-pewing away with loads of magic bolts. Here's how you can create the ultimate powerhouse in Dragon's Dogma. The Magick Archer gets access to 3 separate weapons: daggers, bows, and staves. This offers you a bit more options deciding between pure magic or a more agile build. For our purposes, we'll be using the Frame daggers and a Blackwing bow. I originally wanted to use the Sapphire daggers as they deal more magic damage, of which we'll be focusing on. But in the end, the more physical damage the better, as your daggers will be there for when enemies are resistant to your bow attacks. Ice dragons and eyeball creatures especially become challenging to take down without these. Loot BBI for the tier 3 weapons and hope for the best. This bow is also the best magic bow in the game, and that really is all you need to know about it. With its cool design, it styles up your build and will drop enemies quickly. You can always carry a good staff around as backup, but you won't really need it with what we're going to do here, as this build is just too good. Armor is a bit iffy, as you really just want the highest defense. However, I will mention that the trophy set offers more magic tier stats while also fitting the Magick Archer part very well. The jacket can be grabbed using a Moonbeam gem in Dusk Moon Tower. The bracers will drop from Bitter Black Armor level 2 or from a quest that has you enter the Pawns Guild in Grand Soren to defeat 2 higher level enemies. As for the boots, which have a plus 30 magic bonus, I've yet to get those. They're from a quest that has you collect all the Macabre statues in BBI, or the Armor level 2 can drop them. They're very, very good, and considering the damage you'll see in this video is without them, it's pretty crazy. All the other armor is up to you, as they don't offer that much else. Just make yourself look as fashionable as possible. For our rings, we're once again going to get some massive buffs here. First, a Master Ring with 87 extra magic damage. You'll want to try for one that has 100, as that's the highest amount. Whatever you can get really is fine though. The second ring is the Magic Bowman's Band, specifically one that buffs 6-fold Bolt and Magical Gleam. 6-fold Bolt is your bread and butter as Magick Archer. It has a fast cast time, deals high damage, and hits with ice, which a lot of tough enemies are not resistant to. This ring turns it into 9-fold Bolt, granting it 3 extra stacks of what are essentially arrows. This might sound like a slight upgrade, but it's an enormous one. The skill gets infinitely better and just deletes monsters. Now, Magical Gleam, on the other hand, isn't that great for damage. It summons a light which can burn mainly undead. But since the ring comes with it, we might as well use it. As always, be sure to bring along the Ring of Desiccation so water doesn't turn off your light, and all 3 of these rings are going to be looted from BBI gear level 3. Although Desiccation is much easier to get with a Moonbeam gem in Dusk Moon Tower. Of course, your build is nothing without some skills, and we'll first start with the dagger. For this, I chose 100 Kisses, Magic Rebuffer, and Instant Reset. Unfortunately, this means we don't have Immolation, which is great when climbing monsters, but the setup is a must for me. 100 Kisses is your best melee attack as a dagger user, and will be essential when climbing foes. Sometimes magic can't harm a monster well, and that's when you want to be able to cut as fast as possible on a monster's weak point. Magic Rebuffer is ridiculously overpowered. This skill charges up a light sigil that will be placed and grants you extra magic damage. It works exactly like magic pariettes, but cannot stack with them, meaning you have an unlimited supply of magic boosting pariettes without the weight of those pariettes. The effect stacks up to 4 times, and the buff lasts long enough to take down your enemy. You can move outside the sigil and still get the buff. The sigil's just there to grant the buff and also affect your pawns as well. Makes you deal triple the amount of damage. Against fire drakes, this turns a really strong enemy into absolutely nothing. Not needing to waste your time with the items that do this both saves in carrying capacity and you trying to save them for harder fights. It's just so nice to have this skill. Then we have Instant Reset. Of course, here you could replace this with Immolation if you wanted to, but no. Instant Reset is a required skill. After using it, you really can't go without it. It resets you back to normal after using skills or getting knocked down, greatly improving the combat as you can recover immediately and almost never get grabbed. You really don't need it, but I can't think of any other skill that feels this universally helpful. With all three of these dagger skills, you'll be able to move around combat freely and deal crazy amounts of damage. Now for the bow skills. Magic bows actually have a lot of really interesting skills, but you really won't use most of them. This is because two of the skills are infinitely better than the rest. Grab Sixfold Bolt, Ricochet Hunter, and Magical Gleam. Sixfold Bolt I sort of went over already as we're buffing it with a ring. This skill has it all. Really far range, plenty of stagger, and loads of damage. It's an essential part of any Magic Bowman's toolkit, and it will trivialize flying enemies and large monsters. This is your boss slaying machine. Next, we have Ricochet Hunter, which, how do I say this? It's a cheat code. If you're in a hallway or a small room, which BBI has almost entirely, it melts anything near you. I'd say it has the highest damage when it comes to close quarters, because the toughest monsters can sometimes die instantly. What it does exactly is let loose a few electric bolts. These will bounce off of surfaces up to 20 times, dealing more and more damage as it ricochets around the room. Aim at a wall, the ceiling, or the floor, and it pew-pews around, dropping all the enemies. You can't get a better skill for Bitter Black Isle, as it allows low-level players to defeat endgame enemies with no effort. Now, I will say it sucks in the open world. Without a dungeon, the bolts are not worth the effort. Yes, they do still deal damage, but they're just not made for this. Simply use it inside. Also, since Ricochet Seeker deals lightning damage, it will often stun enemies, or fly them into the air. The utility of this skill is absurd, and there really isn't anything like it. Lastly, we have your third skill for the bow. I ran with Magical Gleam, since my ring is buffing that skill as well. It felt like a waste not to throw it on. This one throws up a holy ball of light that deals damage to undead, which it does set them on fire and can be good for groups of skeletons, but overall, it's a long-lasting light. Considering the entire second half of Dragon's Dogma is very dark, I do like having it around. If you add in the magical bolts with Magic Rebalancer, and you have the greatest light show possible. With these three skills, you will be the boss in this game. Your damage is extremely high, and staggering foes takes no longer than 3 seconds. We will need some good augments to buff our character, so here are the ones that I decided on. Attunement is from the Mage vocation, and it grants you 10% more magic. Acuity is from the Sorcerer vocation, and it grants 20% more magic. Emphasis is also from the Sorcerer vocation, and it increases your knockdown power of magic skills by 30%. Since this should apply to Sixfold Bolt, of which we're mainly using, our knockdown power will be huge, dropping dragons in one shot. Sinew is from the Fighter vocation, and it grants the extra 20 carrying capacity. Since you will be dropping enemies so often, you'll likely gain a lot of loot. You can also carry more healing items with this augment, but feel free to switch it out if you don't need it. Impact is from the Warrior vocation, and it increases the knockdown power of your attacks by 30%. This one works mainly for physical attacks, but it does also apply to a variety of magical skills as well. When you switch to daggers for magic-resistant enemies, this augment comes in handy just to give you an extra edge. Endurance is from the Strider vocation, and it increases your maximum stamina by 100. With bow-based builds, you're going to want as much damage and stamina as possible. Often you won't be directly near the enemy, allowing us to focus less on defense and more on sheer offense. With all of these augments, you have a lot of magic damage and a lot of knockdown power. Throwing in a strength augment instead of the extra carrying capacity is not a bad idea, but this worked really well for me. Enjoy plucking away while your enemies drop onto the ground over and over. Now, pawns are usually personal preference, but I do have a set that I enjoy bringing along. As usual, I have a mage with healing and holy enchant. These are two skills that help you in nearly every situation, so it's almost foolish to go without them. Next, I have a sorcerer. As we have that sigil that buffs our magic and magic defenses, any ally who walks into it gains the same buff, both increasing the survivability and impressive damage of an already strong sorcerer. Collecting one with High Guy Seal in particular is a great idea, as that skill is very useful, and with more damage, you're going to love it. Lastly, I like to have a more tanky pawn. A warrior would be fine, but most of the time my warrior pawns kinda suck. They just don't do much while walking around a lot. Then you could also choose a strider for especially metal golems, but I kind of went with a fighter here, because the shield allows them to avoid a lot more damage. If they're able to taunt enemies, this also lets you stay back shooting your magic. Because you and a fighter would have good physical damage, running a sorcerer and a mage is not a bad idea. But make sure you do have at least some physical capability, or problems may arise against golems and ice dragons especially. At this point, you probably have a good idea of what this build is about, but just to make this clear, here is how you go about combat. When you're in a hallway or small room, you want to shoot off Ricochet Seeker, and then keep firing it over and over until nothing is left alive. This skill is so strong it doesn't even need to be buffed to destroy armies. In BBI, this skill fits right in and will make clearing the place a breeze. Then when you come to larger rooms, you won't be able to use Ricochet as it won't bounce as much. Here is where you switch to Ninefold Bolt. As the ring gives us a significant boost in power, this skill will impact everything you shoot and deal amazing damage. Go ahead and activate Magic Rebalancer before you walk into massive areas and you'll have no issues whatsoever. With the range this skill offers, you have a lot of leeway in battle and can better maneuver around. Fire Drakes are really easy with this skill since they're very weak to ice. However, most other dragons can be a bit challenging. I opted to simply climb up and dagger them since they're not nearly as weak to ice. Definitely the Ice Drakes for sure. And yeah, that's about it. Buff 4 times, then plink away. It's extremely fun just being able to drop enemies so quickly, and with a good set of pawns, you become unstoppable. Against Daemon, it's very nice, as Ninefold Bolt works very well in that fight. Overall, it's just a very nice setup capable of taking on any situation. My personal favorite thing about the Magick Archer is that fighting living armor is so easy. You just let the bolts fly and they die in seconds. If you want the best that Dragon's Dogma has to offer, then here it is. The Magick Archer vocation is easily my favorite way to play the game, with really fun magic skills backed by strong daggers. Hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please feel free to leave a like. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.